Hi everyone, and welcome to a slightly different Sketchbook Time video this week, where I'm going to be talking about my essential colour palette for Luminance pencils. Now this video came about because I was asked once on Instagram and once by a member of my art process club whether I could recommend a starter palette of colours for somebody who perhaps doesn't own any coloured pencils and it's completely new to them and they just need to know which colours to get to create a good collection to work with. So this is quite a tricky one because not only do I own a lot of Luminance colours, I've only been working with Luminance pencils for about the past 2 or 3 months, but since I guess August, September time, I have been adding to my collection gradually, and I have actually ended up with about 50 pencils. So that's quite a lot, and it's too many for people to start out with. So I have to narrow those down to, somebody on Instagram said between 12 and 15 colours to start with. I've actually chosen 16 because I thought that was a good number, and it pretty much covers, I think, all of the colours I would need to create a variety of artwork. Yeah, this is a very impromptu video. This is something that I thought it would just be really interesting to talk about with you, and it's actually made me think which colours are really essential to me, because when you have so many to choose from, it's actually really hard to narrow them down. But this is going to be my advice if you are interested in the same kind of colour palette as the one I tend to work in. So I would generally describe my colour palette as being a limited palette in each individual artwork. So I don't tend to use that many colours in an individual piece, but I do tend to use quite a lot of colours over my entire body of work. And I would say I prefer generally muted tones. I really love greys and blues, and I'm really getting into using greens. I didn't used to. I'm not a huge fan of yellows and reds and really, really bright colours. Although, having said that, I do like to add a hint of bright colour to my work. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of my drawings that I've worked on recently, just to give you an idea of my general style and colour palette. So this is one of my recent drawings. This is quite small. This one's A5 size. And you can see here that I did use a limited colour palette. I mainly stuck to bluish greys, dark greys and terracottas and oranges. And this is mainly Luminance pencils. There's a little bit of Posca pen in there, and the smoke is a white neo colour crayon. But yeah, you can see that gives you a good idea of how I use the pencils and the type of colour palette I prefer. So this piece is much larger, so we'll get that away from the camera a little bit so you can see it properly. But this is a really limited colour palette, and it's more muted as well. And this is the way I love to work. I like to add a lot of pattern and layers and texture, but stick to just a few different colours in any given artwork. So now that you've seen my style of artwork and the colours I like to use, if this is of interest to you, please continue watching and I will share the 16 colours that I think would make a great starter colour palette. We're going to start on a fresh page, and I'm going to colour swatch the pencils for you, and I'm going to talk to you about why I decided to include them in this collection. So the first one is dark indigo, and as you can see by the size of the pencil, this is one that I'm using the most at the moment. It's one of, I think, 24 new Caran Luminance colours. I think they brought them out a few months ago, and I discovered this a few weeks ago, and since I bought the dark indigo, I have used it in pretty much everything. Yeah, this is one that is an essential pencil in this collection, and I'm going to show you why. So if I swatch it here, I'm going to do it really firmly at first, and then gradually with less pressure, and I hope that this is showing up on camera. Basically, it's super dark and super rich, but it's not black. And I think this is why it gives the pieces so much life. So I don't know whether this is showing up, but when you see it in person, this has a real blue tone to it. And also, I've noticed if you layer other pencils over it, it will bring out the indigo even more. So for example, if you use their pink white pencil, which we haven't included in this collection, it really brings out the indigo tones. But it's a perfect alternative to black because it actually has such an interesting undertone and also doesn't look as heavy as black. I hope that makes sense, but that's why I would include dark indigo. So next I wanted a brown and I decided to go with sepia. So let's swatch that one. I think the sepia is the perfect brown because it's not too red, it's pretty dark, but also you can use it very lightly. Sorry, this is smudging a little bit. But it's absolutely, bits are going everywhere. This isn't very professional, is it? But yeah, this is a really good brown if you just want one brown. It's not too red, it's fairly dark, but as you can see, you can use a lighter touch and it's not quite as heavy. And I find that this is one of the browns I use the most. So we're going to pop that over there and we will go for the next one, which is Payne's Grey. Now this is truly one of my favourite pencils. And that's what it looks like if you swatch it very heavily and you apply a lot of pressure. We'll do a little bit lighter there. But this again, before Dark Indigo, Payne's Grey was the pencil I was using the most, and I'm still using it a lot. The one thing I find with Payne's Grey is that it goes so well with so many other colours, so that's why it's been included in this collection. It's certainly a pencil that I really couldn't be without, and if I just choose one pencil to sketch with, it would actually be the Payne's Grey pencil. Okay, so the next one is Payne's Grey 30%. Now I was in a bit of a conundrum with this because I also love the Payne's Grey 60%, but it's kind of similar to Payne's Grey. There's not a huge difference. So I thought if we're going to be building just a limited palette of colours, it has to be Payne's Grey 30%. So I'm going to swatch that underneath the Payne's Grey so you can see. And it is a gorgeous shade of bluish grey. And it's light enough and different enough to be included. And I think this is a really versatile pencil. We'll talk a little bit about the different subject matter some of these pencils could be used for. And I think this could be used for many different things. So definitely go for a Payne's Grey 30% because not only is it a beautiful shade, I think it's a very versatile one. So another blue I chose was something a little bit lighter and brighter. It's light cobalt blue. So I'm going to swatch that one here. And it's just such a gorgeous, fresh, light blue. And I think that every palette really needs one of those. It goes beautifully with the rest of these as well. So the last blue I've included is also one of their new colours, I think. It's Indanthrone Blue. So swatch that here. Oh, oops. Uh-oh, I think I was doing that a bit too heavily. Right, have a little break while I go and sharpen this pencil. Okay, I'm back. Poor pencil, I think I was a bit too firm with that one. But you can see that this is such a rich blue, and this would be perfect for night landscapes and also possibly coastal scenes as well when mixed with the other blues. But yeah, I think this gives a really nice range of greys and blues. So that is another favourite. Right, then we go on to the slightly softer and maybe more muted colours, I guess we would say. This one is violet grey. Now this has been my favourite from very, very early on. I find that I use this in most of my pieces in some way. So it's this lovely warm toned violet, but it's so soft. It's such a soft and muted and gorgeous colour, and as you can see, goes beautifully with the rest of them. So next up is burnt sienna, 50%. This is another one that I seem to use a lot. So it has real brown tones, I guess, but also it's sort of, how do we call it, rusty pinkish. I don't really know how to describe this colour very well, but you can see that it could be used for all sorts of different landscapes, and I find that this one is one of the pencils that I'm using the most, so that's why it's included in this set. And there's burnt sienna 10% as well, and I just thought this was just a lovely soft pink shade. I wanted a pink, and I did think about including violet pink, which is another favourite of mine, but I felt like burnt sienna 10% is softer and just a little bit more muted and gentle, which, as I said, is my kind of style and my kind of palette. So we'll go on to the greens. This one is dark sap green. I only got this pencil recently, but I immediately fell in love with it because it is, I would say, a green with bluish undertones, which I really like, and it's incredibly rich. It has a really lovely texture as well when you lighten the pressure a bit, so you can make it really intense by layering it, or you can just do it lightly. I think this is a great green for example, forests or landscapes when mixed with the other greens. I'm going to show you, I have two other greens that are really quite different. So in this palette, I've tried to include as many different colours as I possibly can while still keeping it a limited palette. So yes, we have Middle Verdigris. I think this is another one of their new colours, so I only got this recently. But this is a beautifully fresh and gentle green, and works so well with the other colours. And now we have something a lot brighter. Light malachite green. So this very sort of, I guess, almost turquoise, tealy kind of green is very, oh, I don't know what's happening there. Is there something in the lead? I don't know. It's very fresh and beautiful, and I haven't used it very much yet, but I think could be good for coastal landscapes, or seascapes rather. Okay, and then I wanted to choose a few autumnal kind of colours. So I went with terracotta because it wasn't quite as bold as the russets. It kind of had a softer look, and I thought it was probably a little bit more versatile. And as I was going to include apricot, which is really quite bright, I thought we could do with a sort of softer terracotta colour, because the russets are really quite vibrant in the Luminance range. So we have apricot, and then we're on to the last two. Herculaneum red, which is another new colour. And this, it's, I mean, it says red, Herculaneum red, but it's actually a gorgeous, soft, orangey peach kind of colour. Perfect for autumn landscapes. I'm swatching these in a really weird way, aren't I? I started going like that and now I'm just going kind of straight. This, as I said, this video hasn't had much planning. It's just really me sitting here just testing things out. So the last one, and I should have done them differently because I'm going to end up with one little odd one down here, but never mind, hey. Brown ochre 10%. Now, I wanted to include something that was kind of a little bit yellowish, but wasn't really yellow because I don't tend to use yellow very much in my work. So I chose the brown ochre 10% because it was softer and slightly more muted. Okay, so how would these work? I mean, as you can see, they look fantastic together as a palette. The colours just seem harmonious to me. I don't know whether you feel the same, maybe you feel differently, but to me, I really feel like they work. So how would I use these in different landscapes? Okay, so I think we'll stick to landscapes because obviously sometimes I do draw and paint other subjects such as birds and so on, and botanical designs, but I think mainly I'm known for my landscapes, so I'm going to talk to you about how these would work in my landscapes. So for like, say for example, a moody landscape, so it's like a stormy day or an overcast day, I would probably go for the dark indigo mixed with the Payne's grey, probably the Payne's grey 30%, because I love to use this one with the Payne's grey. I think obviously they just work so well together. And what else would I include in this landscape? I would probably go with the violet grey. And burnt sienna. I think burnt sienna needs sharpening. And then the soft burnt sienna 10%. Sorry, did I say that was burnt sienna 50%? I don't know whether I just called it burnt sienna. I won't know until I play this back when I'm editing it. So I'll just say it, burnt sienna 50%. And do you see how this works so well? And if you wanted the brown in there, you'd obviously include that lovely sepia too. But that would probably be a small mini palette for like a moody landscape, if you just wanted to use those 7. Now for an autumnal landscape, I would go for, obviously I'd go for dark indigo. Dark indigo is probably going to be in quite a few of my different palettes. So we'll go for dark indigo, definitely go for Payne's grey. I think Payne's grey is another one that you can include in so many different palettes because it works so well with other colours and adds a really kind of dramatic contrast, depth and darkness if you need it. I would then choose the sepia. So at the moment it's kind of looking similar to my moody landscapes, but it won't. I'm just going to move those over there. So if it's autumnal, we're definitely going to go for terracotta. And if you layer that, you can make it much deeper. We're going to go for potentially apricot. I mean, apricot is very bright, so it depends on what kind of autumn landscape you want, whether you want to go a little bit more muted or whether you want to go bright. I think actually that works well. I would say definitely put that in. And the Herculaneum red You see this is looking really beautifully autumnal now. And the burnt sienna, 50%. It's a slightly, I guess you could say this is a slightly heathery colour actually. That's how I would describe this. Slightly heathery, which is why it's perfect for autumn landscapes. And yes, the brown ochre, that's brown ochre, isn't it? Yes, brown. I always get confused as to the name of this one. I think I want to call it burnt ochre. Brown ochre, 10%. So put that in there. And I think that would make a lovely autumnal, like a soft autumnal colour palette within this collection of pencils. If I was putting together a larger autumnal palette, obviously I have a lot more oranges and rusts and things, but if we're just sticking to this, this is a good one. I would also perhaps suggest that you add violet grey to this, because this is another lovely sort of heathery shade that you might see in sort of a slightly more purpley heathery shade that you would see in the autumn. So Moody landscapes, autumnal landscapes. Now if we wanted to do a night landscape, what would we go for? We would go for dark indigo. Of course we would. You're seeing a bit of a theme here. Okay, so dark indigo, we'd definitely go for the Payne's grey. Sorry about the rattling of the desk, it's when I'm scribbling away, it's sort of rocking the table. Then we would have indanthrone blue, perfect for this. And if you wanted something a little bit lighter in there, I'd go for the Payne's grey, 30%. So there's your really basic night landscape palette. And you see how all of those are significantly different from each other and they all work so well together. Okay, so the other thing we could look at is perhaps, what could we go for? A lovely kind of summery green landscape. So we would just get the dark sap green. Great for pine trees, this one, I think. So yeah, dark sap green, just checking I've got the name correct. And we would include middle verdigris. And then what else would I go for? Maybe actually brown ochre, 10%. That's a lovely soft kind of sandy colour that the fields sometimes turn at the height of summer. And I think maybe, I mean, if you wanted to go for something quite light and bright, you see, but I wouldn't, this is the thing, I was going to say put the light cobalt blue in there, but actually even if I did a summer landscape, it would be something that was a little bit more muted and subtle. And I guess this is what we're doing. We're looking at this from my perspective, because this is what the people wanted to know when they asked me about this. They wanted to know what my colour choices would be. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to say that probably I would use Payne's grey 30% if I wanted to add a blue in there. So I think that that makes, I'm trying to cover it up so it doesn't get mixed in with the other ones. But that is a really lovely, soft, summery kind of muted summer. We'll call it muted summer landscape. Are there any more that I would include? You see, I don't like to mix too many colours. I'm kind of thinking that Herculaneum red could be a nice summery kind of colour. So you could add that in there. I'm just going to swatch it there. You see it's all quite muted, but it's pretty colourful. But I probably wouldn't add that because I know what I'm like. Okay, I'm going to just do very quickly a coastal colour palette. So we will definitely go for the light cobalt blue. I'm going to swatch that over here. We're not going to start a new page. Go for that, and definitely the light malachite green. I don't know why that's swatching in a weird way. Do you see these streaky bits here? It doesn't normally have that. I wonder whether I've accidentally gone over another colour with it and it's got kind of a little bit of the other pencil on it. I think it probably has. But it's normally quite a pure colour, so just ignore that. And I would go for Payne's Grey 30%. Sometimes you get these lovely skies over the sea where it's kind of a storm coming, and so the sky is this kind of dark bluish grey, and that would be perfect for that. Or even for the water in the North Sea, because it's often that colour. So we would definitely go for that. Now what else would we go for if we were doing, I guess you could say that you could use the sandy colour, so the brown ochre 10%. That could be great for a coastal seascape. And if we wanted something a little bit more punchy, go for the Indanthrone blue. And I would always recommend something like the Payne's Grey for adding a bit of depth, or if you want to add detail or something. So I think that that could make a really nice muted coastal colour palette. Okay, I think that's it. I think have I used all of the pencils? I don't know. Who knows? You'll be able to tell me perhaps. But I hope you get the general idea. You can see why I chose these colours. They're definitely the ones I would recommend. I did think about this for quite a while when I was putting this together, and there were pencils that were in and out, and I was finding it quite hard to decide. But this is, I would say, a very good starter colour palette. This has been a bit of a funny video. I hope that you found this interesting. It's been fun to film. Thank you for watching. I will be back again soon with a studio vlog, and I also have another choosing keeping art haul for you with some other new and lovely products. I have some new pastels and pastel pencils that I'm going to be testing as well. So yeah, there'll be a lot of colour swatching and art haul style videos and a good old traditional studio vlog coming up. So okay, I will see you again soon. Take care everyone, and thank you again for watching.